You open your council tax bill, glance at the total, and your eyes flick briefly to a single letter printed near the top. Band D, Band E, Band C. You barely register it. It has always been that letter, on every bill, for as long as you have lived there, printed in the same small font in the same corner every single year without ever once inviting a question. What you almost certainly do not know is where that letter actually came from, or that it might be quietly wrong and has been for over 3 decades, silently adding pounds to every single payment you have ever made. This is not a story about council tax being too expensive in the abstract, and it is not a complaint about local services or the people who empty your bins. This is a story about one specific letter assigned to your home, decided by a valuation exercise that happened in 1991, that has never been redone since, and that roughly 1 in 8 homes in Britain currently sits in the wrong version of. Here is the number that should genuinely surprise you. Every single council tax band in England and Scotland is still based on what your property would have sold for on the 1st of April 1991. Not today, not last year, 1991. A brand new house built in 2026 is still assessed by working out what it would hypothetically have been worth 35 years before it existed. Wales uses 2003 instead, which sounds more reasonable until you remember that is still over 2 decades ago. And here is the part almost nobody knows about how those original 1991 values were actually calculated. This was not a careful house-by-house survey. Valuers were given an enormous number of properties to assess in a very short window, and much of it was done through what is genuinely described as drive-by estimation, using local sales data and reference properties, rather than walking through every single front door. Errors crept in at scale, and those errors have simply been carried forward bill after bill for 35 years without a single national correction. Let's understand how the bands actually work, because the structure itself hides how much this can distort your bill. Every property sits in a band from A to H in England and Scotland, and each band is a fixed fraction of the Band D rate, expressed in ninths. Band A pays 6/9 of the Band D figure. Band D itself is the reference point, the full 9/9. Band 8, at the very top, pays 18/9, exactly double what Band D pays. Here is why that matters. A home valued at £40,000 back in 1991, sitting in Band A, might genuinely be worth £250,000 or more today. A home that was worth £500,000 in 1991, sitting in Band H, might be worth several times that now. But because the ratio between the bands was fixed in 1991 and never revisited, the Band H home only ever pays double the Band A home, regardless of how wildly their relative values have actually diverged in the real world since. Now let's talk about what this actually costs you today. The average Band D council tax bill in England for 2026 to 2027 sits at roughly £2,280 a year, itself a 5% rise on the year before, right at the maximum. Most councils are permitted to raise it without triggering a local referendum. That cap itself includes a specific 2% slice ring-fenced for adult social care, quietly stacked onto almost every bill in the country as the population ages and care costs climb. Stretch the total back 5 years, and the average Band D bill has climbed from around £1,818 in 2021 to that £2,280 figure now, an increase of roughly 25%. Comfortably outpacing general inflation over the same period, and that average hides an enormous regional spread. Depending on your local council, the exact same Band D valuation can cost you as little as £866 a year in Westminster, or as much as £2,690 in Rutland. Same band, same letter on the bill, over 3 times the cost, purely depending on which side of an administrative boundary your front door happens to sit on. Before we even get to challenging the band itself, it is worth checking whether you are claiming every discount you are actually entitled to, because these sit quietly underneath the headline figure too. Living alone qualifies you for a 25% single-person discount, one of the most underclaimed reductions in the entire system. Full-time students are exempt entirely if everyone in the household is studying. Certain disability adaptations can move your entire property down a band, not just apply a discount, permanently reducing what you owe every year afterward. None of this requires a valuation challenge. It simply requires actually checking the list against your own circumstances, something most people never do because the letter on the bill has trained them not to look closely at any of it. Here is where this stops being background trivia and becomes something you can actually act on. Because the 1991 valuations were done quickly and imprecisely, genuine errors exist, and you are entitled to challenge your band for free through the valuation office agency. The evidence that actually works is comparing your property against similar homes nearby, ideally identical properties on the same street, to see whether they sit in a lower band than yours. If they do, you may have a real case, and the numbers on successful challenges are genuinely striking. In one recent year alone, over 10,000 properties across England had their band moved down following a challenge, compared with just 30 that were moved up. The odds when a genuine case exists sit overwhelmingly in the challenge's favor. Let's put a real figure on what a successful challenge is actually worth. Say, your local Band D rate is £2,280 and you are currently sitting in Band D, but genuinely belong in Band C, one band lower, worth 8/9 rather than 9/9 of that figure. That single band drop is worth roughly £253 a year, every single year, for as long as you live there, and because the correction is backdated to whenever the error began, potentially years or even decades, the same challenge that saves you £253 annually going forward can also return a lump sum, stretching into the thousands, arriving as a single refund rather than a slow trickle. But there is a real risk buried in here too, and skipping past it would be dishonest, because this channel is not in the business of pretending every opportunity is risk-free. A band review can move your property up as well as down, and the valuation office agency has been explicit about this on every guidance page it publishes. If you challenge without solid comparable evidence, or if your own home turns out to be underassessed relative to your street rather than overassessed, the correction can run against you, and any change is typically backdated in that direction too. This is not a guaranteed win. It is a genuinely favorable bet based on the historical odds we just walked through, but only if you do the comparison properly first, gathering real evidence from real neighboring properties, rather than challenging on nothing more than a hunch that your bill feels too high. Here is exactly how to check in the next 10 minutes, rather than someday, using nothing more than your postcode and a free government website. Search your postcode on the government's council tax band checker. Note your own band. Then look at the bands of several genuinely comparable homes on your street. Similar size, similar age, similar type, ideally built around the same time as your own. If multiple similar properties sit in a lower band than yours, gather that evidence. Note any factors that might have depressed your specific property's 1991 value, a busier road, a smaller plot, a period. The property was significantly different in size or layout, and submit a free challenge to the valuation office agency. If you are successful, you do not just save money going forward. The correction is backdated, potentially returning years of overpayment in one single lump sum, arriving in your account as if the error had simply never happened at all. None of this changes the fact that council tax itself has climbed by roughly a quarter in just 5 years, well ahead of the wages funding it, and there is no serious prospect of a full national revaluation anytime soon, because the political cost of changing millions of bills at once, some up and some down, has kept every government since 1993 from touching it, regardless of which party has been in office. Revaluing the entire country would create obvious winners and equally obvious losers, and no government since has judged the trade worth making. But your own individual band is not politics. It is a specific, checkable fact about your specific home, sitting quietly on a bill you have probably never actually questioned, entirely separate from whatever happens at the national level. The letter on your bill was decided in 1991, quite possibly by someone who never set foot inside your actual house, using sales data and rough comparisons rather than a genuine inspection, and it has simply never been asked to explain itself since. Every year it goes unquestioned is another year of paying against a decision made using 35-year-old guesswork rather than any fact about your home today. This week, before the next bill arrives and you glance past that letter one more time without really seeing it, ask it to explain itself properly. If you learned something from this video, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.